Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Lorelei Tangi, the Endowed University Librarian. Before we get into our main program, I would like to start our evening with a land acknowledgement of our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hashiman and Tongva peoples. Tonight, we are celebrating the opening of UC Irvine Libraries' newest exhibit, Anteater Experience, which will remain on display in the Langston Library through September. Commemorating the 60th anniversary of UC Irvine, this exhibit uses original campus photographs and archival materials from our university archives. It highlights the campus student life, our landscape, and sustainability initiatives, and shows how the campus has transformed over the last 60 years from ranch lands into an internationally recognized research institution. Anteater Experience is the product of many people from UC Irvine Libraries, and the exhibit was curated by Christina Acevedo, Stephen Anderson, Cheryl Baltus, and Cynthia Johnson. Research and contributions were also provided by John Sisson, Crystal Tribbett, and Audra Eagle-Yoon. And last but not least, the exhibit was designed by our talented design services team, Alan Helmick, Sylvia Irving, and Louisa Lee. And now to officially kick off our UCI's 60th anniversary celebration, I would now like to invite Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor Hal Stern to the podium, for a special welcome.
Thanks, Lorelei. I want to start by acknowledging the great work that Lorelei and her team do. Lorelei provides outstanding leadership and numerous other contributions to the campus too outside the library, so thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight to start off this special exhibit. As Lorelei said, in the best tradition of places like universities and Disneyland and like, we're going to be celebrating our 60th for a while, so get used to it. This is the first event, but it'll go on for a while. So there'll be other events coming. This exhibit really covers, as Lorelei said, the campus development and key milestones since UC Irvine's founding in 1965. I'll put in a note here that on a university campus, you meet a lot of people with a lot of special interest and, nerd activity. I have to confess that for me, histories of universities is one of those topics. I won't bore you with other places I've worked, but I find it just really interesting, some of the stories of how places start and some of the great stories from the past of people who've been here and people who've contributed here. And the exhibit gets to some of that. And I think it's a lot of fun, and I'm really happy to be a part of it tonight. I usually start by making sure everyone knows what a provost and executive vice chancellor does. It's largely an internal audience, but even internally, I discover many people don't know what the provost and executive vice chancellor does. Certainly my wife has not a clue. So the provost is the chief academic officer of the university. So in that capacity, I work closely with the deans and others to set up programs. And the executive vice chancellor is essentially the chief operating officer. So that's what I do. I want to be short because there's a very interesting panel to come, but I do want to say a few things that put the exhibit in context. And to start, I guess I want to make sure we acknowledge the success of the campus has been made possible by the people in the community first and foremost. So that includes a large number of people who are in the audience, and I'm grateful for that, but many others, past, present, faculty, staff, students. It's all about the community, and we're really grateful. The commitment that our community has to teaching, research, and public service, the mission of the University of California, we've made enormous contributions to Orange County and to the state of California, and even broader than that. We're gathered, obviously, in the Langston Library, one of the first buildings on campus. And originally, it was called the Library Administration Building. The first chancellor, Dan Aldrich, had his office here before moving across to the building now known as Aldrich Hall, where I have my office and others nearby. The library obviously contributes to campus in so many ways. Obviously, they offer up millions of books and other periodicals, et cetera, et cetera. Although, reading, not from a device, is so old-fashioned, Lorelei. The library Lorelai's done a great job of making the library, continue to be a central part of our community and especially our students' lives. Among other things, archival materials, and in fact, this exhibit, of course, draws on the university archives, which are an important part of the libraries. So we have had a number of anniversaries, and again, the folks on campus have tried to make each one a little different. So the 40th anniversary, the library highlighted campus architecture. For the 50th, we focused on people, and there were a lot of oral histories collected, for example. So for the 60th, as Laura said, we're focusing on the environment, and today's panel will really get to that. Before we get to the panel, though, I want to make a few milestones, few comparisons between UC Irvine 2025 and UC Irvine 1965. The campus opened with 7 founding academic divisions: biological sciences, fine arts, humanities, physical sciences and social sciences, and engineering and administration, business. So those are the first 7, and we now have 15 schools. So 60 years later, 15 schools, a major effort, for example, in the health sciences. On the first day of classes in 1965, UC Irvine welcomed approximately 1,500 students. This fall, we have 37,000 students. And it's 29,000 undergraduates, and of course, a great deal of growth on the graduate side as we've emerged as a research university. In 1966, at the first commencement, there were 14 graduates. In 2024, I guess it would have been the 59th graduation, there were 11,000 degrees, more than 9,000 undergraduates. And as many of you know, a significant contribution of our campus is 49% of those receiving bachelor's degrees back in June of 2024 were the first generation in their family to attend college. At our founding, the campus had roughly 250 staff and a little more than 100 faculty. Now, UC Irvine is Orange County's second largest employer, behind Disneyland, of course, with more than 28,000 employees across the campus and medical system. I also like to say that we're the second happiest place on earth. Finally, I want to make a brief note about our health system. Health activity at UC Irvine started in 1967 when UC Irvine was named the new home to the former California College of Medicine. Today, UCI Health has grown to, or will soon grow to when we finish the hospital on Jamboree, to more than 1,300 beds and numerous clinics and sites throughout Orange County. We're having a huge impact there. So let me close my remarks by noting that those are pretty impressive numbers, but most impressive of all for me is that UC Irvine, in addition to the way that we transform the lives of many, many families, has emerged as a top 10 public university and without doubt one of the 40 best universities in the United States of America. There are 3,000 universities. I mean, it should be an incredible point of pride for all of us. We're a member of the Association of American Universities, known as the AAU, which is the collection of the leading research universities in North America. There are many, many superlatives for the university, but for me, what's happened is just fantastic. And we're still relatively young at 60. Look around this crowd, right? We're young at 60. We have a lot more to do, and we're really, I think the way we like to say is we're 60, but we're still on the ascent. Okay. So thank you for being here. I hope you'll encourage your friends and colleagues to come see the exhibit and learn about the important impacts that UC Irvine has had on our community. And with that, I'll turn things back over to Lorelei.
Thank you, Hal, so much for setting the stage and providing that context. So I'm so pleased by the turnout today. In the audience, we've got a wide variety of community members, students, staff, faculty, alumni, and campus leaders. While I don't have time to acknowledge all of you, I would like to recognize several of the following people. First, it's my pleasure to acknowledge the chair of the UC Irvine Foundation Board of Trustees, who is also the first alumnus to be chair of the board, Gary Singer. Another esteemed UC Irvine Foundation trustee here tonight is James Irvine Swindon. Now, many of you know that James is the son of Joan Irvine Smith, and according to Chancellor Gilman, I'm going to give a quote here, it is no exaggeration to say that without Joan Irvine Smith, there likely would not be a University of California, Irvine. What we are today and all that we contribute to the world is due in large part to her farsightedness, her tenacity, and her generosity, end quote. So thank you, James, for you and your family's support of UC Irvine, not just at the beginning, but through all the 6 decades. Thank you. Also here tonight is a longtime supporter and valued friend of the libraries, who is also an alumna and proud member of UCI's charter class of 1969, Kathleen Houts Miller. We are also very pleased to have in our audience the founder of the Crystal Cove Conservancy, who has donated her archives to UC Irvine Libraries to create the Laura Davick Crystal Cove Historical Archive Collection. Thank you, Laura Davick, for being here. Next, a couple who have been dedicated library supporters. He served as the university librarian from 1980 to 1991, and his wife served in the library as head of cataloging, Dr. Calvin Boyer and Ruth Boyer. Additionally, I'd like to recognize a founding faculty member in the Department of History. He has served in numerous campus leadership positions. He was awarded the UCI Medal and the UCI Alumni Association's Extraordinarius Award. He was involved in our 40th anniversary and was chair of that committee, and he is an acknowledged expert on UC Irvine's history, Professor Emeritus Spencer Olin. And I'm not sure if they are here, but we are honored to have some global visitors, Dr. Zhongshen Lin, Assistant Director of UCI's Global Languages and Cultures. She has several visiting faculty from the National Taiwan University of Science and Technology, and if you're here, we welcome you all. And now I am happy to introduce our distinguished panelists, so if you don't mind, please come up to the stage. First, we welcome Jim Danziger, an emeritus faculty and founding member of UCI's Department of Political Science. To his left, we have Megan Lulow, Executive Director of UCI-NATURE. And finally, we have Steve Zylius, Chief University photographer and managing producer director at UCI's Office of Strategic Communications and Public Affairs. So our panel discussion this evening will be moderated by Christine Acevedo, a co-curator of the Anteater Experience exhibit and a 2022 UCI alumna. Biographies of Christina and all the panelists you can find in your program. So now I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, going to adjust this. It is a great pleasure to be moderating tonight's panel discussion. As Lorelei shared, Each of our panelists has a distinct view of UC Irvine given their varied roles on campus. I have a total of 5 questions for our panelists, after which we'll open up the discussion to questions from the audience. So let's get started. Our first question tonight is for Jim. As a founding faculty member of UCI's Department of Political Science, you must have seen so much change: campus growth, academic programs, and within the UCI community. What are the most dramatic differences between the campus in the early 1970s and the campus we see today?
Thanks, Christina. I jumped ship so that people would be able to see me a little bit more than if I was sitting there. So I've changed the program already for everybody, but that's what faculty tend to do. They don't follow orders. First of all, I'm very honored to participate in this evening's program to celebrate the 60 years and to launch this terrific exhibition. And in fact, if you studied that exhibition very well and also listened to what Provost Stern said, you know a lot of the things about how the campus has changed from a statistical point of view. And full disclosure, I am not one of the founding fathers and mothers of the campus. I arrived a couple of years later, but during my time here, I've served in leadership roles at the department level, school level, campus level, UCOP, so I've been around for a long time. Well, what are the most dramatic differences over 60 years? That's a pretty big question to ask and a more difficult one to answer. So let me start by just saying there are 2 obvious differences, and Provost Stern talked a little bit about them already. One, we went from about 1,500 students to a campus that's really enormous by any standard, and that has some big impacts. So anyone who stays away a few years from the campus and returns will first of all be struck by the physical changes on our campus. That's why we jokingly have always been called under construction indefinitely. And in fact, it continues, although because of spatial issues, sometimes we can't keep going up, so we start spreading out to other parts of the area that we control. So I'm going to stop there with a thought about our campus design. And I'm going to pose a little thought experiment to all of you. You probably know the iconic design of Herrera, which created this campus. Oh, and look at there. We have a mobile mic, so I can take it with me. So here was the original campus design. Now, social scientists talk about 2 different models of planning. One is called social planning. You try to figure out what do people want, how do they behave, how are they going to act, and then you design a physical structure around them. The other one is called physical planning. You create a space so that students, faculty, staff, people will behave in the way that you want them to. Herrera loved aerial photography, and so he wanted to design a campus where there was not a single line that went straight from any one place to any other one place. Exhibit here and continuing. So here's the thought experiment. By the way, in the center, a big area of undulating hills with rocks and trees and rills and frills, but nothing else. If you were designing this campus today, would you have this gigantic area in the center, which is difficult to cross and has nothing in it other than trees and, as Gary Singer said, a place to take a nap, or something different? And would you design a campus where students were not able to go straight from one spot to another when they need to do that, but have to wander around on all these curves in order to get from one place to the other? Would you design the campus that way? I'll leave that for you to think about and maybe talk about later, but I will tell you every year I challenge my metropolitan politics students, and almost none of them would choose either of those two elements of design if they were creating a campus. So thank you, Pereira, but it's not perfect. Let's just leave it at that. So physically, we have this enormous place now with lots of buildings, more than 450 buildings. At this point, we started out with about a dozen. And we have a place with huge numbers of students and faculty. And how does that change things? When I came to this campus, if I walked around the ring road, I would see somebody I knew almost every 2 or 3 minutes at most, and sometimes even more frequently than that. It was a small community. Faculty, staff, and students all kind of shared a common identity as a community. Today, if I walk around the ring road, there's no way I'm going to see anybody I recognize when I do the entire circle. And most of my time, I'm not actually looking in people's eyes to see what's going on. I'm dodging all the people on electric little vehicles who are zooming illegally around the ring road. So it is different. In the old days, we had a tight community. We all knew each other. We all cared about each other. Now we have an enormous multi-university. Now it has a lot of virtues associated with it. And I'm often asked, how are the students different? Well, in some ways, students are never very different. Although, I believe as our campus has changed, we've seen a lot more diversity. First, we had a huge flow of Asian American students for a variety of reasons. More recently, a huge flow of Latino students. And I do think they are a little bit different than some of the more original students in the sense that they and their families value education as a special privilege, not as just the next step. And they're very serious about wanting to go out and make a big impact on the world. And that's very cool. At least the students I have in social sciences. I can't speak quite so much about all of the other ones. And so they're mission-oriented, they value education a lot, and they're very tech-savvy. And I'll say one more thing about that before I go on to my second theme of this little talk. And that is, when I first started teaching Intro to Comparative Politics, and I had 400 students out there, and I could talk confidently about all kinds of different countries because I had traveled to many different countries. And so whether I was talking about Ghana or Brazil or Japan, I could talk confidently and say whatever I wanted. I would know there'd be maybe one student out there who was from Japan or spent time in Ghana, and after class they might come up and give me what for about what I said. But now, near the end of this stage, whatever I claim as a fact of knowledge, 25, 50, 75 students out there in front of me are Googling to see whether in fact what I said was correct. So that makes it a lot tougher. My second theme is to talk about a couple of what I think are the key drivers that help shape this place over this 60-year period. And my UCI is not under construction indefinitely, it's under constant innovation. First, the early leaders on the campus were incredibly important and powerful. Some of you were there, like Spence, at that moment. I wasn't. But those early leaders had some visions for this campus that were very important. Chancellor Dan Aldrich said, I want a super comprehensive campus because I think Davis never got the respect it deserved. It was an ag campus. So he wanted us to spread our wings as far as possible and in many fields as we possibly could. Then he appointed 2 political scientists in a row to take the job that Hal Stern had. And they came up with the idea, let's not have a big college of letters, arts, and sciences, some gigantic monstrosity over the top. Let's have schools. The schools were silos. They operated independently. They ignored central administration to a frustrating extent to the central administrators, but they were more innovative, more creative, more willing to try different things. So the dean of the arts wanted a performance school. In the humanities, they decided they wanted to focus a lot on critical theory, very avant-garde. My school, social sciences, we had a dean who didn't think there should be departments. So how was I hired? I went into an interview, and in the room there were 2 political scientists, and the rest of the interview team were all people like economists, linguists, psychologists. I was supposed to persuade them, according to Jim March, our dean, that I was smart and interesting and doing something amazing. Wow, that was a tough sell, to say the least. Every quarter, all the faculty were told, what would you like to teach next quarter? And everybody would just dream up some course, write a 1-paragraph description, and this little book went to all the students explaining all these courses. They had no idea what the courses were. They had no idea if they'd ever be taught again. They had no real clear idea of what they needed to graduate from the school, in fact. And so people came up with wild ideas about different courses and taught them. Where else but in a school like that could I, as an assistant professor, be the chair of my program and eventually chair of my department when departments were initially created? So hats off to the early leaders. They were amazing. And they created a special environment here. Secondly, and I have to be careful about this, especially if I tell my story later about how this campus got to be here rather than the Newport Beach Barracudas, the Irvine Company, incredibly influential and powerful in how this campus emerged, how it was shaped, the largesse of Don Brin, the importance of Joan Irvine Smith in fighting for something against some of her colleagues, the conflicts within the Irvine Company, TIC, about how they were going to develop the city and how the city and the university were going to relate to each other. Very complicated, extremely difficult. Town-gown relations were not that great. Originally, City Hall was going to be right across where this bridge is now, but the Irvine City, once it was formed, said, we're not having that good of a relationship. We're taking City Hall across to the other side of the city, and good luck, campus. We finally created this symbolic bridge to try to bring us together. Later, I hope I'll tell the story about, in more detail, how we got to that 1,000 acres for $1 deal. Third, University Hills. A decision was made to be bold and experimental and create an on-campus environment for faculty and staff to live, to try and recruit more effectively. I was on the ISHA board for a long time, and we spent much of our effort constantly changing the campus plan to take more and more space to build more and more housing because it was so successful, and created an interesting second-level community of faculty primarily who really interacted with each other in a human, social, residential way, very different than the way they would interact as a department or more generally on the campus. And so this experiment, which started in 1986, one of the few things that doesn't get a whole lot of attention on that board, now 1,200 homes, about 500 apartments, and a really interesting community to live in and to engage in a different way with a lot of your colleagues. Fourth, student life. Irvine was known as the boring city, And many of the students who came here, it was either because their parents wanted them to be in a boring city, or because their parents wanted them to be close so they could come home on the weekends. Student life staff have done an astounding job over many decades to try to make life more interesting and exciting for our students. As more and more dorms were built, more and more people were on campus, so it isn't like the early days where on Friday, almost all the students would disappear and the campus would be like a ghost town on the weekends. So we brought in fraternities, we brought in a lot of other student life activities and sororities, and as a consequence, we have a much richer student life now than we did back in the day of those early periods of time. Our designers did not want students to have a place to protest when we formed this campus because it was the protest era. So another part of that design, nowhere really where all the students can hang out and be with each other and foment. It was really only in 2007 when the real fully developed student center emerged as a place where the students could see themselves as working together. And finally, again, something that the provost was talking about, a constant drive for prestige. We were the new little kid on the block, and we wanted to be taken seriously. We wanted to have a campus that people would look at and say, wow, UC Irvine, that's a pretty cool place. We did it first with sports, where we were very successful nationally. And then over time, we threw in some Nobel Prize winners, and we threw in, some other things like research funding, professional schools, and as Provost Stern said, we became a place that was consequential. And by 60 years, we have a lot to be proud of. I hope when I come up later, I'll get an opportunity to talk to you a little more about why we're sitting here rather than in Newport Beach or northern Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for sharing those insights. I think for me, while working on this exhibit, as everyone or quite a few of our speakers have mentioned, seeing the growth of students was really interesting. Even just from the 60s to 70s, there was quite a bit of growth. And then also for me as a student, when I came to the campus as a freshman, I believe UCI had just been designated a Hispanic serving institution. And if you look at our exhibit, also more recently, they were designated Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institution. So seeing those designations and how they've happened more recently and the increasing diversity of the campus has definitely been, I think, one of the more positive changes. And now our next question is for Megan. So our anniversary exhibit has a special focus on UCI's land development, sustainability, and conservation efforts, which are key parts of UCI's goals and educational mission. What is the campus's role as a steward of its land and local ecosystem? What have we done well, and what are the challenges for the future?
Okay. See, I'm trying to decide if I'd like to stand up or sit down. I guess I'm a little comfortable standing up as well. Hello, I'm honored to be here and share with you some of my experiences working at UCI and the natural areas and reserves on campus. So on the most general level, stewardship and our role in stewardship is about maintaining a functional natural ecosystem that supports our native flora and fauna. The natural reserve systems that are part of the University of California are specifically there to serve the students, the faculty, and the community to support research and teaching and public service in natural areas. And the UC Natural Reserve System is unique, and it's one of the largest university reserve systems around the globe. So we are lucky here at UC Irvine to have two natural reserves so close to us. There's the San Joaquin Marsh on the other side of University Drive and the UCI Ecological Preserve. And having these natural areas in such close proximity really brings up the opportunity to foster like place-based collaborative work and a sense of community among our students and faculty. We also have 2 other natural reserves, if you haven't visited them. The Steel Bernand Anza Borrego Desert Research Center out in Borrego Springs and the Burns Pinion Ridge Reserve. So just at the UC Irvine campus, we have a wide breadth of ecosystems to learn from and to conduct our research and teaching. Some examples of the work that we do include sponsoring, I should back up and say that I'm part of UCI-NATURE, and UCI-NATURE is a program on campus that oversees the natural reserves. It was designed in 2016 as a more central location and program where people that are interested in doing their research or teaching in natural areas can go to and learn about where there are opportunities, both within the UCI Natural Reserve system and even with some of our local partners that own open space in the area. So we work with other organizations on campus, such as the Center for Environmental Biology and the Masters in Conservation and Restoration Science, and we'll sponsor student internships and provide them with like hands-on experience and managing reserve areas, day-to-day activities. We'll also assist them with developing research questions along with faculty. They'll collect data and monitoring that's important for our natural reserves. We also serve to assist researchers with identifying locations of where it might be an adequate place to conduct their research and provide them with background information about the natural areas, specifically the ecosystems where they want to conduct their work, and then and inform them about other research that's been going on the lands. So some of the highlights for me, as I've been working at UC Irvine since about 2016, is just how collaborative it is on campus here. And one of the processes that has been a lot of fun is working on this naturescape concept, and there's a naturescape vision. So the idea of naturescape is UCI's naturescape is all the interconnected pathways and trails, teaching pavilions, research sites, and natural areas that are on campus, in addition to the trails and pathways that connect UCI with adjacent open space areas. And so the vision is to acknowledge these open space areas and reserves as the opportunity to foster place-based and collaborative work, interdisciplinary work, bring people and the campus community out from their individual buildings and departments and have these areas to socialize, find have some wellness areas for refuge, but also to collaborate on projects. Aldrich Park, looking at some of the areas that are lawn currently and having different themes for community gardens. So UCI-NATURE has participated with other campus units in this vision, and I've found that very exciting. It's also been a pleasure to work with our neighboring open space partners, and this is really important for land stewardship. As you know, we live in a highly urbanized area, and so a lot of our reserves in Orange County are somewhat fragmented. And so whereas the wildlife and natural resources and processes such as wildlife movement, water movement, they don't have borders that are political. And so we need to work with our partners in order to maintain these natural areas to make sure that there is connectivity and movement, in addition to coordinating with them on some important initiatives and practices such as invasive species control across different areas, and also making sure that we take care of our endangered species and rare species. Some of the challenges that we have, I think, moving forward in the future in these areas include is fundraising and making that naturescape vision a reality. And so it's a very exciting vision, and I think in particular, as we move forward into the future, these areas become more unique. And so I'd like to participate and see these outdoor classrooms and field research sites, and just more awareness from students and faculty in general of the opportunities and where our reserves are. And then, of course, there's climate change and climate change impacts and how we can respond to those and maintain healthy, functioning ecosystems and our native flora and fauna. And so we're, again, working with our partners and identify grant opportunities to become more nimble and responding to these challenges. For example, the San Joaquin Marsh, we have some infrastructure improvements that will help us respond to both drought periods and flood risk. So that's a challenge. I mentioned working with our partners to maintain these connective corridors and processes between units. And so one area that I'd like to work with our partners further on are these wildlife corridors that allow species such as bobcats and coyotes to move between areas. And so that's a challenge, but I think for the future. But as these areas become more unique and valued, I just think our society is going to invest more and pay more attention to what's required to maintain them. So I'm not sure if I think that answers. There's some additional ones. Yeah.
Thank you, Megan. I think it'll be really interesting to see what UCI does with naturescaping moving forward. I know, and it's mentioned in our exhibit, there was actually initially plans for a lake in Aldrich Park, so that didn't come about, but I think it'll be exciting to see what UCI does do moving forward. Now our next question is for Steve. So as UCI's lead photographer, you've documented pretty much every major milestone during your tenure here. Faculty awards, campus protests, the COVID shutdown, and so on. We actually asked you to be a panelist tonight because so much of your work is featured in our exhibit. As a first-hand witness, what are some of the most interesting or memorable events you've covered?
Is this thing on? Okay, great, yeah, awesome. Okay. I thought about this and I said to myself, oh my gosh, just how am I going to talk about just like a couple? There's just so many, but I'll focus on a couple. One was the 50th anniversary, and President Obama came to the university's university-wide commencement. And, that was, I guess we had an in with Obama because I think one of his staff members was actually, an Anteater graduate. I think we had a little bit of an inside track there. But the event took months and months and months of planning. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like the whole university just sort of came together just in this common goal. And that's something I think that this university is really, really, really good at. It's sort of built into the DNA of the place. If you just look at the construction of the university, it's circular. Everybody is facing each other. And so we have to work together. And this was, for me, a kind of a trial by fire, because my little department had shrunk from like 5 people down to 2 people. And so we had to, like, you know, entertain people for 2 hours, you know, as people were filtering into the stadium. So we had to come up with an audiovisual presentation. And part of that entailed me gathering all sorts of historical photos from all the different departments on campus, and to come up with a slideshow. You can still view it on YouTube, by the way, if you're really interested. But you know, gathering all of this historical imagery was kind of eye-opening, because for one thing, there's a lot of imagery. You mentioned that Pereira loved aerial imagery. There's a lot of aerial imagery from the early days. There's a ton of it. And it's really, really interesting to look at, because it's like you can see just like where, okay, that building went up, that wasn't there the year before, that building went up, that wasn't there the year before. It's like, and the circle just sort of gradually closes in on itself till we finally have, you know, the whole of the university. But one of the things I noticed is that in this gathering of material, is that there wasn't a lot of representation from a couple of decades, like the 80s and 90s. Not a lot there. And I'm not sure, maybe the libraries has some of that. I'm not really sure. But I think we really started to aggressively document the campus probably starting in 2005, 2006, 2007. And I was hired in 2009. I came on then. And anyway, we created this loop to show folks coming into the commencement, and it was really interesting. We had a trivia, you know, a trivia slideshow. We had musical slideshows, and it was and videos, and it was a product of a lot of people, and so that was just before. The day itself was hot, long, and intense. I had to, you know, we got up at like 5 in the morning, you know, just to get there, and I had to make sure all the GoPro cameras were set like in the right places, and only one of them worked. So yeah, unfortunately that was a loss there, and I try not to dwell on that, but like, okay, we got to get the moment when the president zots. That's what I got to get. And as it turned out, yeah, that was a great moment, and it's represented in the exhibit over here. But that was not my favorite. That was not my favorite moment of the day. My favorite moment of the day was a very small moment that happened about 15 seconds before that. It was the president. They were getting ready to zot, and the president had his hands in like the wrong position. Anybody who zots know you got to make a snout, right? That's what you got to do. Well, the president had his fingers like this, which is, I think, a Texas Longhorn. This is like the wrong symbol. So one of the things that the Secret Service, I think, tells you is you can't touch the president, right? Well, you can't have the president doing a wrong zot. So the undergrad speaker, like, just sort of real quick, just went, just like that, and you know, and the president said, "Oh, okay," you know, and he looked at his hands like that, and I caught that moment, and the thing that made it great, I think, was the look of bemusement on all the faculty in back, going like, "Is she gonna," you know, but it was a wonderful moment, and I still have it, and that's probably one of my favorite pictures that I've shot. The other thing I think that that we all sort of remember, and for better or for worse, was the pandemic, and this place completely changed, and everybody's lives were touched profoundly, and it was one of those shared experiences that. It was the most important story of my life up until that point. The impact was quick, unprecedented. We scrapped the magazine we were working on and were almost completed to come out with a new magazine dedicated to the COVID pandemic. And there was just no other news that mattered at that moment. Again, what happened? The whole university stopped and worked on this common goal. Never seen anything like it. The only thing I can maybe liken to it historically was when in World War II, the whole country was focused on the war effort. So I'm a photographer. So what do you do when there's no people to photograph? That's the problem. There's a conspicuous lack of activity on the surface. And I'm sort of reminded of all of those computer-generated images that you see online. Say, what would happen if all the people disappeared from the earth? And you see all this imagery of like husks of buildings and vines growing through them. And I imagine maybe that'll happen. I don't know. But Aldrich Park was starting to look pretty shaggy. But I did get some really nice images of it because it coincided with that period of time in spring when we have pink trumpet trees, we have yellow trumpet trees, we have bougainvillea blooming, we have the jacarandas come in May, and so I actually got some really nice imagery out of it. And somewhere along the line, in spring, or maybe it was early summer, we started our office started a COVID news update. Like every day, you would get it in your mail, right? And somewhere, I think maybe it might have been July, they started anchoring the email with a little piece of what we, who are ex-news people, call wild art. And what that is if you've ever worked in the newspaper, right? You see Karen over here saying, yeah, I know what wild art is. That's the thing that you shoot, and when somebody has a hole to fill in the newspaper, you plug it in with a caption. Well, they started running one of these things at the top of the COVID update. And kind of a funny thing happened. It was, it sort of is a testament to the power of photography because it sort of became a touchstone. And I started to feel a real responsibility because I was kind of turning into the eyes of the UCI community. And I got more feedback from that one little feature that we started running, and it's still there today. We publish the UCI Digest 3 times a week. It's anchored by a piece of wild art. We kept that tradition. But I got more feedback from people who said, thanks for the photography. It's because I miss it, I miss seeing the campus because everybody was gone. And then everybody started working from home. So it was a while before things got back to normal. But you got a sense that we were creating a little bit of light in all this darkness. Aside from that, all of the work that was going on underneath the surface was truly astounding. There's too many to mention, but the engineers were working on marvelous inventions. They were holding drives to gather medical supplies. Students were making medical supplies, and it was, we documented all of this, and I'm glad that I got a chance to just document a little corner of the world during this really, really important moment in time. And I think the thing I took away from it was that that this university is a really special place. And when things are, when things are bad, that's when we shine the brightest. So, hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Steve. I was actually in my third year of education here at UCI when the campus closed down. And I was a commuter student, so at the time I kind of just took classes at home and was doing all that remotely. So it was really interesting for me seeing your pictures of the campus during that time to get a better idea of what it was like. And at this time, we'll actually be inviting questions from our audience. So if you have a question for any of our panelists, please raise your hand so I can call on you. Our staff will bring you a wireless microphone so we can all hear your question. Yes.
Hello, my name is Michael Theodore. I'm a first-year PhD student in Criminology, Law, and Society. And my question is for Steve. What makes a great picture to you?
Wow, okay. You're making me dig deep, man. What makes a great picture to me? I think something that gives you something different to look at every time that you look at it. Like maybe there's something you didn't see before the first time you looked at it, but you look and you say, oh, I didn't notice that, I didn't notice that, I didn't notice that. Wow. Aside from the rules of composition and everything, I think what I like to look for in a photograph is something that makes you, first of all, interested, right? You want to be somehow visually stimulated, but maybe there's something else underneath, like just the simple aesthetics of the picture that makes you think. So, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It did.
Okay.
This question's for Megan. Megan, what makes the 200-acre marsh so special that's pretty much part of the campus?
Well, so it's one thing is that it's special in terms of all of coastal Southern California as one of the last remaining freshwater, now kind of brackish water wetlands. So we don't have a lot of wetland areas remaining in Southern California, and so it is unique, and to have that right next to campus, and then also integrated with Newport Back Bay and the San Diego Creek. We have this, in Orange County, which is a relatively small county, for all of California. We have this this great watershed, going from the hills and the Santa Anas through San Diego Creek out to Back Bay, and our San Joaquin Marsh is right, right by around that the inlet to the bay. I think it's also I've actually in my career I've done a lot of more terrestrial work in ecology, and so working with a wetland was newer to my career, but it has that component of water that is integral to the ecosystem, but it also just connects it with the rest of the landscape. And I've also found that it connects, me to other, like I said, neighboring partners and other fields in ecology, the physical sciences, and So those are some aspects of the marsh that I enjoy.
Hi, Goran Matjashevich. I am a PhD alum of UCI and work here now in University Industry Engagement. I heard that the UC originally got 1,000 acres for $1. Professor Danziger mentioned that in a bit, but then I heard also that UC went back and said, we'd like to purchase another 500 acres. And so we're smart about that. That was at market price, whatever that price was. So my question is, which is the first 1,000 and which is the additional 500? Do we know?
I guess I can answer that. The original 1,000 is first. And there was a lot of conflict within the Irvine family about whether the campus should be given this land for nothing or at a very high price. And Joan Irvine Smith was on the side of contributing the campus to the campus at the very low rate. There's a lot of backstory. She actually went to DC, got a law passed about pieces of land in America, of which there were only 2, that and the Irvine Ranch was one of them, in terms of giving away resources, allocating them, and so forth. And so, without going into a lot of detail, there were 2 members of the Board of Regents who also had ties to the Irvine Company. And what they decided was to try and sell the Regents on a location on the Irvine Ranch. And they didn't really care where. But they claimed they should use the Stanford model. High-class university, research university surrounded by high-tech companies, and then housing that's very expensive. And this was a way to take a nondescript piece of land and dramatically increase its value. So they persuaded the Regents to go along with that. Pereira looked at a variety of sites, and actually his key choice was down where Spyglass Hill is, if you know where that is, in Newport Beach. And the idea was to purchase that piece of land for the university. However, a small piece of it had been turned into a cemetery, and a few bodies had been interred. And so as a consequence, that person was not willing to disinter the bodies, sell that space to the university. So Pereira said, well, let's take this big, nondescript, boring piece of land because it's a blank canvas and we can turn it into something great. That was the first 1,000. And then the second area was under more constraints to create research-oriented facilities. So that's how it happened. That's how we got it for $1. And we can thank Joan Irvine Smith largely for that.
We have time for one more audience question.
I think this may be for Professor Danziger, but it may be for all of you. What is the wildest thing you have seen in your time here? I know I've been here long enough to see a few crazy things, but I'm so curious.
Well, we may all have a wild thing. I will say one of my memories is when there was a very well-organized student nude run across campus, which was housed in the student life building, where they all changed into nothing and ran across the campus. Another thing was when some of the students that I knew realized there was a set of tunnels under the main buildings, which were originally designed to help the administrators get out when the students took over the campus. At least that's the story that we all believed. So they all went down there and had an all-night party and got caught and were then put into some kind of detention, but I don't really know what. So there was a lot of wild stories. I'll just finally say, when I joined the School of Social Sciences, that was a lunatic asylum. The faculty there were brilliant, but crazy. And so some of the activities that they engaged in were very memorable. And I know a few of you out in the audience were here at that point, so you know that story too. Anyway, I'll pass it along. Those are a couple of them. There was a lot. I've been here a long time. It's been a great ride. What can I say?
Let's see, I guess one that comes to mind, actually, speaking of tunnels, I had mentioned these wildlife corridors and connectivity. And so in trying to scout out what it was like to try to move between areas, I don't know if you all know Matt Dinas in campus planning and sustainability, and then another one of our partners with the Nature Reserve of Orange County. We proceeded to walk from research park area under the culvert under the 73 to Bonita Canyon, and I hadn't had much experience walking through long, dark culverts like that, and so it was fun. It wasn't dangerous, but it was a little creepy to have to crouch down, and then there was a little bit of water and crawdads crawling around, and then see what it was like to try to move from between areas, and so we all kind of laughed a bit at the end, and in the middle of the tunnel. So.
And I think this whole place is wild. I think those petter drops are probably one of the wildest things I've seen. I've seen two of them. It's the weird. It's like the weirdest thing you've ever seen. It's a bunch of it's 100 students running at top speed from wherever they are across campus, across Ring Road, wherever they are, and then they just sort of stand and line up to get these stickers, But there's no sound. It's very, very quiet, so it's very odd, but very fun and very colorful. And some of the research. Hello. Test. Hey, there it is. Okay. Some of the research is really wild. Greg Weiss's lab figured out how to unboil an egg. Yeah, I don't know how they did it. They explained it to me. I still sort of don't understand it. There's a video out there if you're really interested on how to unboil an egg, but they did it. But the reason why they did it is not just for fun. They do it to get proteins for cancer research. So, again, it's an amazing place, and I started here coming from newspaper work, and people ask me, "Well, are you going to get bored just working in one place?" No, this place is like the wildest place to be a photographer. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. All right.
And that concludes our panel discussion. Please join me in thanking each of the panelists for their time tonight. Panelists, you are welcome to return to your seats, and I will turn it back over to Lorelei Tangi for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Christina, for moderating, and thank you, panelists, for sharing your wonderful stories. I love the diversity and the different perspectives that you bring. I feel like we've all gained a greater appreciation of UC Irvine, so thank you again for this. So a big part of UCI's recent campus history has been the Petter the Anteater stickers that Steve just mentioned. For those of you who are not familiar with the Petter stickers, they were created by a UCI student in 2018. And they are, as he described, a phenomenon that just brings together students in a very large crowd and in community. So we're really happy to have this Petter stickers student display. It's a companion to our 60th anniversary exhibit. The display is right over there. It includes a wide selection of Petter stickers and provides a brief history of the student-driven Petter community. The student curator is Daniela Galvin. I think she's in the audience. There she is. Great. Woo. Thank you so much, Danielle, for putting this wonderful exhibit, and I encourage all of you to touch base with her to find out more about Petter stickers. Thanks again, Danielle. So, in closing, throughout the year, events and programs like these would not be possible without the support from UC Irvine Libraries Gateway Society. And I'm so delighted to see so many Gateway Society members in the audience. Your continued partnership helps the libraries support the UCI's world-class research, teaching, and patient care. It supports the library's role as a major information resource for the community, and it sponsors public programs, such as today's event. So for more information about the Libraries Gateway Society, you can pick up a brochure at the registration table or see Wendy Morner, our Senior Director of Development, right over there. She's waving her hand. And now it's time to view the exhibit and the student display and enjoy refreshments in our Holden room, which is just to the left of our checkout desk. So please join me in thanking our presenters and panelists again. Thank you for coming.